All right. So let's start working on our project. And the first thing that we need to do is basically download the Laravel. So I hope that, and I assume that you have downloaded the Composer and you have also run the Composer global command for the Laravel installer. And if not, there are two ways to install Laravel. I will show you both, but I will prefer to use the global version as well. So I am inside the HT docs. So what I need to do is basically I will open up the PowerShell here. If you have the PowerShell window installed, so what you can do is basically press the shift and right click, and it will show you the open PowerShell window here in the context menu. And the other thing, if you don't have installed here, so what you can do is basically go into your htdocs and click on here and just enter cmd. So what it will do is basically it will pick the default location from where you are opening the command line terminal. All right, so what I need to do, I'm going to do is basically open up in the PowerShell, and I will obvious basically do is, all right, so there are two ways to install Laravel. The first one is the composer create project Laravel / Laravel and the name of the project that uh, we need. So I will so that's the one way of doing this, and the other way is if you have set up the composer global for your Laravel installer, which I have already did in my system. So what I will do is basically Laravel new jobs portal. All right, so what it will do is basically it will fetch all the information from the Laravel installer, and it will start installing the Laravel. All right, so I am pausing the video here, and once this is done I will come back. All right, so now our installation has been completed, and you can see that at the end application key set successfully. So this is the last message that Laravel generates for us once the installation is completed. And what we need to do is basically I have to so let's create a database here. Let's go to the localhost /phpMyAdmin and just create a new database. I will call it as jobs portal. All right, so what do I need to do is basically let's open up the project in our PHP Storm. So I'm using PHP Storm. You can use any you like. There is one more which is the VS Code. So that's also better for developing applications, but I will prefer to install to use the PHP Storm. All right. So what should I need to do is basically this will obviously prompt us some messages to install the npm, or if you want, so I will say don't ask me again. And what we need to do is basically just right now, first of all, just configure our database. So our database name is jobs underscore portal. So I will open up the env file, and you can see that it has already created an app key for us, and the debug mode is obviously true, and the environment is local, and the app name is Laravel. Obviously we will change it later to something else. All right, so it's by default it says if you install the application using the Laravel new command with the Laravel global composer, it will automatically sets up the database for you. And if there is any other database that you have used, you can obviously change the name from here. So the username will be the password in my case, and the sorry, the username will be the root and the password will be empty in my case. All right, so let's go ahead and just quickly update the name of the our application app name. So I will call it uh, jobs portal. And one more thing is that it is creating this test local host environment for us. So it is assuming that we have configured our settings, and right now I have not configured any settings. So what I will do is basically I will PHP artisan serve to make the Laravel website live, and then I will update the location here. So instead we can just type in the local host. This will obviously do the work. All right, so let's go ahead and run our application. So I will first of all clear it and PHP artisan serve. All right, so whenever we hit enter, so it will create a server link for us, and if we open it here, and you can see the Laravel has been installed. All right, So next thing is basically we need to set up our HTML files here. All right, so we will be doing in two ways. The first way is that we can actually use the CSS in the header elements in the header part of our HTML sections, and the second thing is that we can use the Vite configurations. So obviously, I will try to use the Vite configuration, but not on the main login pages, but inside the dashboard page. So obviously, we don't need the login page to be configured using the Vite. So obviously, the login page is not very is not a page that contains a lot of code. So obviously, the dashboard section inside when we log in the user to the dashboard, so that's basically obviously needs to go into the Vite configuration. All right, so let me pull up the admin template here, and I will show you what how the login pages and register pages look like, and we will start converting them into our Laravel project. All right, so here is our admin template, and if I go to the auth section here and click on the login, so this is how our login will look like. So let's go ahead and quickly implement this in our HTML. So I will first of all, let's go ahead and just close it here, and one thing I need to do is basically go ahead into the web APIs, and let's remove everything from here, and in the callback function obviously, so let's go ahead and first quickly create the um, controller for us. So for that, what we need to do is open up a new terminal, and obviously PHP artisan make controller. All right, so there are three type of controllers. The first controller is basically a simple controller that does not include anything. It just creates a controller file for us. So let me quickly show you here what it is. So I will say login, and what it will do is basically creates the login here. So you can see that it's totally empty, just the class of the login, and um, it is calling the its base class. It is loading its base class, the controller, which is right here, and nothing else. The second way is that we can generate the resource controllers. So we will see that resource controller later, what those things are. And there is another controller which is called the invocable controller. So invocable controller, what it does is basically that is used for single action requests. So how does that look like? Let me show you. So for that we need to give a flag of invocable. So once we do that and we come here, and you can see that it is saying the invoke, and right now what it is accepting is basically the request. So what does this mean? That this invocable function will only trigger on the post requests. All right, so that's the functionality of this. And the last thing that I told you, that the resource controller, so let me show you that as well. If I say the change the flag here to resource. All right, so let's go ahead and quickly open it up, and you can see that there are a bunch of functions available for us. So for the resource, that Laravel automatically creates the curd operation functions for us. Obviously, in every controller we do the curd functionality the most, and there the other functions that comes. It totally depends upon us how we use them. So first will be the index, create, store. So index will be for loading all our data, or to showing all our data in some table, in some form of the table. The create will load the create form page, and store will actually do the post request from this page. And the show method is basically just showing the single item or single record. Then is the edit, and there is the update. So edit is basically loads the form for us, and the update will do the post request, and then lastly there is a destroy method. All right, so what we need to do is, in that case, we don't need to have um, anything else right now instead of the login controller. So what I will do is basically move back to my original controller here, and I will quickly close it here. So here is our controller. So first thing that we need to do is basically create a public function um, called index. All right, and that will just return um, login page. And the next thing that we need to, since I am using the Laravel 9, so there are a lot of things has been changed throughout the Laravel versions, initially in 5.4 and I think till 5.6 or 7. We were using the controllers like home, at the rate, index, something like that. Now in the latest versions we can use it by simply calling the login controller and just passing it instance of the class. And obviously I will remove this thing from here and I will just import the class here, this one, the controller, and just group this in an array and just pass in the method name that we have. All right, so what I will do is basically just name it as login. All right, so that's how this will work. And if we go to this page here, and you can see the login page is here. All right, so let's go ahead and configure our HTML for our website. So I will show you this thing only once in the project, so how I am going to configure them. But lately we are not going to dive into the HTML part, how we configure things and stuff like that. So I will just skip that part and will obviously show you the more Laravel things. All right, so first go ahead and create our, inside the resources, what I need to do is basically create inside the views. So let's delete the welcome.blade.php and create a new directory. And first of all, I will name it as components, if I spell it right. All right. So the next thing will be the directory for the login, and it's a very good approach if we categorize our modules in separate directories so that the files does not conflict with each other. So that's why I am using these things. And the last thing that I make the folder for is the partials. All right, so let's go ahead. Inside the components I will create another directory for the login, and inside the login I will create uh, yep. So inside, or maybe we can just remove the login directory, and inside the components, I will just simply go and create a PHP file, and I will name it as uh, guest maybe dot blade dot php. All right. So let's go ahead and quickly open up the login HTML here in our code, and what I will do is basically, instead of this section top till here, I will paste it right here, and I will remove this from here, and the next thing will be this one. I didn't copy the div, so I will paste it here. All right, so that's about it for this setup. And right now what we need to do is basically we need to give this a path to our um, here where it is inside the public structure. All right, so there are, I told you that we can do this in two ways. The first one will be the public. Inside the public we can load files from there, and the second one will be from the Vite configuration. So I think so we should go for the Vite configuration from the start of our project. All right, so for that what I will do is basically I will copy the assets folder first of all, copy this here, and I will paste it. I will come to the C directory, XAMPP, htdocs, and here where our project is, this is the jobs portal, and inside the resources we need to put our assets folder. All right, so let's this thing gets copied, and what we need to do is that we come into the Vite configuration here. So right now you can see that we have the app.css and app.js. So what will it do is basically it will so we will import all our JavaScript files and all our um, CSS files inside the app.js. So where we can find it is basically resources, JS, and app.js. So right now you will see that it only loads the bootstrap. So let's get this thing copied. I think it's copied here. So what I need to do is basically I will obviously import things from here. I will just quickly starting copying one by one. Import. We need to go back to assets like so, and I will just quickly do this thing, replicate and copy and paste it here. We need to close this one. So I have copied the CSS over here. The first thing that I have copied is the CSS, and the second one is the JS files. So for the JS files, we don't need to specify the .js extension. It will obviously automatically get the JS files for us. All right. So what I need to do is one last step is basically I need to remove these things since we don't need them here, and also this one, and I will remove this from here. Obviously we need this fav icon. We will do that later. And what I need to do is basically I need to set up the Vite file so that I can call all my CSS and JavaScript in the head section. So what I will do for that is basically I will go into the Vite. I will type in the Vite directory, and inside here I will say / public / all right. So once we compile our assets, once the v directory, we will run the v directory to configure and compile our assets. So this will come right now inside the public directory. So if I take you to the Laravel documentation and search here for the assets. All right, so wait a second. All right, so inside the document, if we come down to this basic section and bundling assets, and inside the bundling assets, this says the Vite configuration. So after doing everything, what we need to do is that we need to uh, first of all, let me see, there it is. So once everything will be done, so the there is a directory that we need to call, and we need to call this inside our resources, CSS and app. So obviously we are doing this everything inside the JavaScript. Excuse me. So we don't need the CSS, and what I need is basically just the app.jss which is obviously inside the resources files. All right. So in order to work this, if I go ahead, save this thing, and all right, so let me just quickly do one more thing is that I will call this slot variable here. So what this slot will do is basically whatever the element we surround with this component, the component that we have created, the guest. So all the HTML content will obviously land right here inside the slot variable. So let me show you how that works. We have removed everything. Now inside the index method, sorry, I will return view, and let's quickly go ahead and create the inside the login. We need to create a file called um, index.blade. All right, so let's quickly close this thing. And in order to call this, there are two ways to do things to in order to extend our components. So first thing is basically the Laravel old way is doing the extend method like so, and what will do it will do is basically extends the components and the guest component. And everything you need to do is basically you have to create the section for every content that you would like to pull in. Now there is another way that I prefer to use is basically just call the component. So I will call the components by using the x dash um, guest. Now for that your component should needs to be inside the components directory. So Laravel will automatically get it from there. And inside the this guest component, I will quickly come to this section and I will paste it here. All right, so everything should needs to be work. So we need to load the views inside the views, login and index. And let's quickly go and reload the page. All right. It says unable to locate the class component guest. It's not guest, it's guests, like so. Reload the page. And all right, so the one thing that I did not do by purpose is basically to show you if you do not configure your Vite files, so you will land up to this error. So what you need to do is basically the Laravel says the first thing that we need to do is basically run the npm install after the Laravel has been installed. So what it will do is basically just configures all, and it will basically obviously pull all the node dependencies that our project needs. So what I will do is basically just paste the command line here, command here npm install, and it will start uninstalling the npm dependencies for us. All right, so I am pausing the video here and will come back once the installation is done. All right, so the node dependencies have all been installed. So what next we need to do is basically run the Vite server. So there are two ways to do that. The first thing is basically run the Vite development server. And the second one is just build the assets before going to the production mode. So what I will do is basically I will call the npm run dev. I will run this command. So let me clear up the terminal. And what it will do is basically it will compile the assets, read assets for us, and it will run this server. So what I need to do is basically let's go ahead and reload the page, and you can see that right now it is compiling the assets for us. So that's why you are seeing this page for the first time, and when we will load the page for the second time it will automatically work. Now there is one more issue here, which is that my theme does not uh, do the settings by default. So for that I will have to do one more thing, which is alright. So the issue is that inside the console you can see that my theme somehow needs to require the popper.js before everything else needs to load. So for that issue, in order to solve that issue, what I will do is I will basically go across the way, and I will do one thing in my guest controller, and in that basically I will load the app.min.js right above the Vite directory. So for that what I will do is basically I will create a, so I will paste the app.min.js inside the public directory. So I will create a new directory here. I will name it as the JS, and I will copy the resources. Where is the resource? Assets, JS, and app.min.js. So what I will do is I will copy and paste this thing here, and this thing is done. And I will obviously make this path as asset. So once this is asset, so I will go in, so it will obviously look for the public directory by default, and it will go into the js and app.min.js. And the next thing that I need to do is basically remove this thing app.min.js from here. So I will remove it from here, and what I need to do is basically just uh, close the command and then rerun it again. So it is configuring, Vite is configuring, and if I go reload the page, and you can see everything has been set up. So just it will take a little bit of time to configure things, but there is another way, since right now we are doing this for development server. So what I will do is basically I will bundle the assets so that it does not take time all the every time it should not take that much time. And one more thing I would like to show you is basically if we go to here and you can see that there is a module which is the script, and inside the script you can see app.js, and if we open right now it is showing us these files. So what I need to do is basically I will pause the command here, and instead of doing dev I will do the build thing. Now, by doing this, it will compile all our CSS and JS files, and it will put it inside the public directory. So Vite will automatically look for those files inside the public directory. You can see it has build, and inside the build it has assets, and all the files are here. Right now it says app dot the compiled file and .js. So right now I will let this terminal open here, and I will reload the page, and you can see the response time. So the response time is really quick now, and we do not see any glitch here. And if I just inspect the page view source code, and you can see right here is that it is loading the compiled files right here. And if I open it up, you can see all the files, all the css js has been compiled inside this directory, inside this file, and we don't need to do anything else. All right. So that's how we set up our Laravel files, Laravel Vite configuration, and Laravel controllers. We have only created the one controller, and in the next video we will create. I will basically create two forms for us. One will be the account registration, and second one will be the forgot password. And that's about in this video, and I will see you in the next video.